the Netflix film. The Dirt promised a wild ride through Motley Crue's rise and fall, painting Vince, Nicky, Tommy, and Mick as lovable rebels. But what you saw was only half the story. Beneath the glitter and swagger lies a trail of secrets, cover-ups, and brutal truths that Hollywood conveniently edited out. Today, we're peeling back the glossy veneer to reveal the darkest chapters. The Dirt didn't dare show you. You'll learn how a tragic death was erased from the script, how domestic violence arrests were swept under the rug, and why millions in scandalous tape sales vanished into thin air. Prepare for a journey beyond the pool parties and pyrotechnics, where the real drama played out in courtrooms, hospital wards, and heartbroken families. It all begins with Vince Neil's haunting past. The movie teases his carefree poolside performance like a breezy moment. But in reality, his life was shaped by an unspoken tragedy. In December 1984, after a night of drinking with friend Nicholas Razzle Dingley of Hanoi Rocks, Vince's car careened off the road, ending Razzle's life in an instant. That crash didn't happen at a party. It unfolded on a public street, under the stunned eyes of bystanders. Razzle's body landed in Vince's lap as shattered glass and liquor bottles scattered across the pavement. The film glosses over this as a footnote, yet the aftermath resonated for decades. Traumatized families, shattered friendships, and a guilt Vince carried into every encore. The real fallout included 2 more victims rendered disabled by brain injuries, and a sentence so lenient it defied belief, just 30 days behind bars, of which he served only 15. Speaking of hidden scenes, did you know The Dirt rewrote Motley Crue's origin story? In the movie, Nicky Sixx randomly bumps into drummer Tommy Lee by the pool. In truth, Nicky had been plotting his new band for months. He spotted Tommy's prowess at the Whiskey A Go Go, then orchestrated a covert meeting in a diner at Burbank and Lancashire. No carefree plunge. This was calculated strategy. Their first jam wasn't a seamless mesh of fire and rhythm. It ended in a near-fist fight over drumstick technique. Sweet 19's breakup led to lawsuits over gear and royalties, with Tommy caught in the crossfire. Yet the film skips past that tension, giving you a neat origin montage instead of the gritty reality of legal war and bruised egos. When Vince finally auditioned, it wasn't at some impromptu backyard gig. He sang AC/DC covers in a cramped garage, after listening to demos from the band's first singer, Odin Peterson, who'd already cut early tracks. Then, far from joining for free, Vince demanded $1,000 advance in 1981 money, enough to set off a row that almost dissolved the group before it began. Nicky threatened to cancel the whole thing if Vince backed out with the cash. That raw negotiation shaped their identity. Hungry musicians betting everything on each other. But The Dirt morphs it into a breezy introduction, robbing viewers of the tension that forged their bond. Record label drama was another casualty of Netflix's cuts. Instead of months of suitors and sneaky club performances, the film presents an instant signing by Elektra. The truth is far messier. After selling out shows at the Whiskey, the band released 900 copies of Too Fast for Love on Nicky's own Lether Records. Greenworld Records picked up 20,000 more. Then bigger labels circled with million-dollar offers. Virgin dangled 100,000, but the band spurned it for geographic loyalty, choosing Elektra's LA base. Yet when Elektra finally bit, they demanded a slicker mix. Enter Roy Thomas Baker, Queen's producer, ripping out raw vocals and scrapping tracks like "Stick to Your Guns" over licensing disputes. That shotgun remix session in a Sunset Drive mansion defined their sound for decades. But The Dirt compresses it into a single headline, robbing fans of the behind-the-scenes power struggle. And what about that stolen tape scandal? Between 1995 and 1996, a private sex tape featuring Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson exploded across the internet. The film hints at it, but fails to expose the millions it generated, 75 million in its first year alone. While Tommy and Pamela saw nothing, legal battles unfolded in California courts, culminating in a $740,000 court award each, pennies compared to the loot already melted away. They were powerless as pirates cashed in, and Netflix buried both the blow-by-blow lawsuit and the moral bankruptcy of those who sold the tape. Domestic violence almost erased Tommy Lee's 1998 arrest for kicking Pamela Anderson while she held their baby barely registers as a flip-side anecdote. In reality, police reports described broken bones and red marks across Pamela's back. Court documents detail 6 months behind bars, 3 years probation, anger management classes, and a mandated 100-yard restraining order. The consequence: a public outcry and a sobering reckoning for a man once hailed as a carefree rock legend. Netflix reduced it to a cursory reference, ignoring the full emotional fallout. Behind all these omissions lies a single theme: control. Motley Crue fought to own their music. In 1997, they surrendered $10 million to regain their master recordings. A gambit derided at the time yielded a $150 million sale to BMG in 2021, an astonishing 400% return on risk. That David versus Goliath battle against major labels and shifting music industry tides cemented their legacy. But the dirt shrugs it off as a footnote in their legacy, rather than the crowning achievement it was. So far, we've uncovered erased deaths, near-fatal conflicts, legal furies, and corporate coups. But we're only scratching the surface. In the next section, we'll dive into the band's darkest moments: drug, trafficking conspiracies, life-threatening overdoses, and the crushing pain of personal tragedies that shaped each member. We'll explore how Nikki Sixx survived a heroin coma, only to find himself virtually penniless, and how Mick Mars fought a degenerative disease in silence for decades. You thought the dirt was the full story. You haven't heard a thing yet. Underneath the spectacle of leather, pyrotechnics, and screaming crowds lurked secrets that Netflix conveniently cut from the final edit. Long before Motley Crue scaled the heights of rock superstardom, their inner circle was entangled in one of the biggest drug trafficking conspiracies of the 1980s. Band manager Doc McGee wasn't merely steering record deals and tour dates. He was allegedly running a multi-million-dollar pipeline of cocaine and marijuana into the United States. Federal indictments in 1988 accused him of conspiring to import over 1 million pounds of narcotics. Yet the dirt erases this entire chapter, portraying McGee as an affable fixer, instead of the alleged kingpin who used his clients' fortunes to feed a lavish lifestyle. While the band chased chart positions, law enforcement was closing in. Raids, wiretaps, and grand juries reshaping rock's underworld in ways you'd never guess from Netflix's sanitized retelling. As that legal drama unfolded, Nikki Sixx flirted with death in a hotel room overdose that almost killed him. Late in 1987, he injected a lethal cocktail of heroin and cocaine that sent his heart into sudden cardiac arrest. Paramedics pronounced him dead for 2 full minutes before a friend performed frantic mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and injected multiple doses of adrenaline. Nikki's resurrection wasn't a rock and roll cliché. It was a months-long ordeal filled with agonizing withdrawal, hallucinations so vivid he thought he was already dead, and moments when rehab doctors feared he'd never walk or create music again. But the dirt crushes this story into a brief montage, robbing viewers of the raw struggle that turned him into a survivor rather than just a poster boy for excess. Meanwhile, Mick Mars was waging his own private war against a degenerative spinal disease. By the early 2000s, Ankylosing spondylitis had twisted his neck, collapsed his posture, and left him taking up to 45 Advil a day alongside potent painkillers. At night he hallucinated reptiles crawling across his room. On stage, he forced himself to ignore every jolt of agony, convinced that showing weakness would shatter the band's unstoppable image. That silent suffering, the guitar solos played through bone-shattering pain, vanishes entirely from the Netflix narrative. Instead of offering insight into a man barely able to stand, the movie opts for slick performance clips and glitzy montages, substituting empathy with spectacle. Personal tragedies also get relegated to footnotes. In August 1995, Vince Neil's 4-year-old daughter, Skylar, died of Wilms' tumor after months of surgeries, chemotherapy, and radiation. Whereas the real-life hospital hallways echoed with sobbing nurses and devastated parents, the Dirt slides past this tragedy in a few throwaway lines. Audiences aren't shown Vince's broken persona, the days he refused to leave his daughter's bedside, or the struggle to balance grief with sold-out stadiums. Instead, the film offers a cursory, "he lost his baby" moment, devoid of emotional weight or context. Few viewers realize the magnitude of the 1996 sex tape scandal that would have made any biopic implode under legal pressures. A private tape featuring Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson was stolen, duplicated, and sold across black market video shops worldwide, reportedly generating over $75 million in its first year alone. Law enforcement investigations spanned 2 continents, ending only when a U.S. district court awarded Tommy and Pamela roughly $1.5 million in damages. By then, the pirates had vanished with the profits, leaving the couple unable to recover a single dime. Netflix shrugs at this corporate piracy nightmare, summing it up as unwanted exposure, rather than the battle royale it truly was. Then came the domestic violence allegations that Netflix treats like an embarrassing footnote. In February 1998, Tommy Lee was arrested for kicking Pamela while she held their infant child. The police report included medical photos of bruises and broken bones. A judge sentenced him to 6 months jail time, of which he served only half thanks to good behavior, plus 3 years of probation, mandatory anger management counseling, and a strict no-drinking order. Yet on screen, the incident is reduced to a single, neutral line: they had problems. No mention of the restraining order, the public outcry, or Pamela's own battles with online harassment and lost endorsement deals. The film's male-centered narrative sidelines her trauma, revealing a troubling blind spot in the supposed real story. Even manager Doug Thaler's crucial role in spinning legal outcomes vanishes. When Vince's crash led to a manslaughter charge, Thaler and lawyer Michael Nasatier crafted a business meeting defense to persuade the insurance company to cover the $2.7 million in settlements. Thaler even testified in court, helping reduce Vince's jail time to a mere 30 days. But the Dirt omits every detail of those courtroom dramas, trading them for sleek montages of wine, stained leather jackets, and roaring crowds. This relentless pattern of minimization and erasure isn't merely an unfortunate editorial choice. It's a deliberate reshaping of history. The Dirt fixes the lens on pyrotechnics, pool parties, and the relentless pursuit of excess, while excising anything that might force viewers to confront the dark price of fame, trafficking rackets, near-fatal overdoses, excruciating personal loss, and crimes of the powerful masquerading as rock and roll myth. In our next section, we'll dissect how Motley Crue's most pivotal business gamble, a $10 million sacrifice to reclaim their master recordings, redefined their legacy. We'll expose how that bold move, edited out of Netflix's narrative, transformed a nearly bankrupt band into music industry titans, we'll pore over contracts, court filings, and insider accounts to show why this decision is the true crown jewel of their story. A reveal so gripping, it makes every Hollywood spectacle look tame by comparison. Believe it or not, the single most pivotal chapter that Netflix scarcely touches is Motley Crue's daring gambit in 1997 to surrender a staggering $10 million in exchange for the rights to their own master recordings. On the surface, it looked like financial suicide, a nearly bankrupt band giving up its life savings to wrest back control from Elektra Records. Inside boardrooms and dimly lit rehearsal rooms, however, this move was nothing short of a high-stakes coup. With touring revenue drying up and record sales plateauing, Nikki Sixx, Vince Neil, and Mick Mars realized that their most valuable asset wasn't the stadium seats or champagne showers. It was the music they had created. In a secret meeting with their legal team and financial advisors, they agreed to trade guaranteed cash for future royalties, betting that art and authenticity would ultimately outpace a one-time payout. Netflix, by contrast, glosses over this defining moment as a brief postscript, an afterthought to the headline, grabbing sex tapes and arena trash antics. But in reality, it set the stage for a remarkable second act. To grasp the magnitude of that choice, rewind to the mid-1990s, when Motley Crue's alliance with major labels had completely unraveled. After their 1994 self-titled album barely went gold, Elektra Records and the band fell into bitter acrimony. Backstage brawls, late royalty checks, and creative interference turned boardroom allies into adversaries. Upon discovering that Elektra planned to license their songs for commercials without consent, the band's legal team braced for war. Manager Alan Kovacs mortgaged his house 3 times, alongside personal assets and publishing rights, to keep studio sessions alive and fund prolonged litigation. The members even launched vinyl runs on their fledgling Leather Records, selling bootleg merch and mail-order cassettes. Meanwhile, Elektra dug in its heels, claiming 85% of the master tapes. By 1997, Motley Crue faced a stark ultimatum: accept a $12 million payout spread over 2 years, or surrender their most valuable resource, their own art. When the band boldly chose autonomy over immediate funds, both the label execs and industry pundits were left speechless, marking one of the most audacious power plays in rock history. Their liberation, however, was far from ceremonial. It unfolded through months of pacts signed in shadowy boardrooms and clandestine phone calls across the country. Motley Crue's legal team negotiated a break clause, stipulating that failure by Elektra to allocate a minimum $2 million in promotional support within 6 months would void the contract. When Elektra quietly cut the ad budget, Nikki ramped up pressure by threatening to distribute Never Before Heard demo tracks to college radio stations nationwide, knowing the resulting airplay could cut into album profits and embarrass label executives. Meanwhile, manager Alan Kovacs orchestrated late-night strategy sessions at a rented Malibu beach house, where the band, advisors, and lawyers hashed out every contingency. The climax arrived one sultry July evening in 1997, in an annex to a Beverly Hills courthouse. Under the glare of red-tinted emergency lights, the final signatures flew across reams of legal documents. With that, Motley Crue walked away with 100% of their master recordings in hand. Netflix's The Dirt, unfortunately, condenses this high-stakes coup into a single montage, stripping out the strategic tension and human drama that made it one of rock's greatest hastes. Reborn as independent artists, Motley Crue wasted no time leveraging their new goldmine. They launched Crue Records, signed emerging acts seeking creative freedom, and negotiated distribution deals on their own terms. While peers were still bowing to major label gatekeepers, Nikki Vince, Mick, and Tommy toured arenas armed with the knowledge that every ticket sold, every T-shirt printed, and every streaming credit now flowed directly back to them. The mechanics of music rights, royalties, and reissue campaigns became as central to Motley Crue's strategy as power chords and pyrotechnics. They meticulously released remastered editions of their classic albums, bundled with rare B-sides and behind-the-scenes footage. Each box set sold like wildfire, proving that hardcore fans would pay a premium for authenticity, particularly when the artists themselves controlled every facet of the process. Netflix's version barely acknowledges this renaissance, instead pivoting back to party scenes and backstage brawls, without showing how triumphing in the boardroom translated into a monumental financial upside. The payoff eventually crystallized in late 2021, when Motley Crue struck a deal with BMG to sell their entire music catalog for an eye-popping $150 million. Headlines around the world lauded it as one of the music industry's most lucrative catalog sales, yet the Dirt relegates this transaction to a quick news headline at the end of the credits. Let's break down the math. After legal fees, agent commissions, and production residuals, each band member walked away with roughly $37.5 million. Multiply that by 4 artists and add the management and legal teams, and you have a staggering net return of almost 1,400% on the original $10 million sacrifice. To contextualize, that's akin to investing in a startup at its darkest hour and watching it emerge decades later as a global titan. This narrative of strategic foresight and unwavering belief in their own art deserves center stage, not a footnote. It proves creative control and artistic integrity can yield real wealth beyond any Hollywood narrative. The Netflix adaptation of The Dirt wraps with smoke, fire, and confetti. But the real curtain call was far more bittersweet. After the BMG sale, Motley Crue never simply rode off into the sunset. They fractured, healed, and reinvented themselves in ways the film never shows. Between hiatuses and reunions, the 4 members faced personal crossroads that tested their bond. Suddenly, touring wasn't enough. Each man needed to reckon with the legacy they'd fought so hard to protect. What followed was a series of reinventions, some triumphant, others tragic, that reveal the true cost of rock stardom. Tommy Lee's story after The Dirt takes a sharp turn into the unexpected. The movie hints at his marriage to Pamela Anderson, but omits his later battles with alcohol and legal skirmishes. After their 1998 breakup, Tommy plunged into boxing and MMA training, channeling rage into sport. He appeared on reality TV, hosted celebrity roasts, and launched an electronic music career under Tommy Lee Trash. Far from the one-dimensional party guy, he became an entrepreneur, founding Big 3 Basketball League and earning praise for his tenacity. None of this evolution makes it past Hollywood's surface. Netflix preferred the old clichés to a nuanced portrait of a man constantly remaking himself. Meanwhile, Nikki Sixx's demons refused to stay buried. The heroin coma of '87 was only the beginning. He nearly died again from a methadone overdose in 2014, an episode that landed him in a coma for weeks. Today, he's a best-selling author and radio host, credited with mental health advocacy and speaking openly about bipolar disorder. Yet the Dirt sidelines these redemptive arcs in favor of endless party and punishment cycles. By ignoring Nicky's later activism and hard-won sobriety, the film sacrifices emotional complexity for shallow shock value. Mick Mars, often relegated to background riffs in the movie, waged a far more consequential battle offstage. Ankylosing spondylitis didn't just twist his spine, it threatened his career. By 2015, he'd endured multiple spinal fusions and coped with nerve pain so intense he considered retirement. His perseverance inspired fellow musicians and fans alike, In 2022, Mars announced his official departure from touring, citing health reasons, yet stood by his bandmates as an honorary member. Netflix's version glosses over these silent struggles, offering a montage of Mick's wobbling posture, rather than explaining the years of surgeries and rehabilitation that defined his perseverance. Vince Neil's post-Crüe life bore its own crooked rhythm. The film brushes past his solo album failures, but Vince fought and lost several legal battles over endorsements, followed by a near-fatal car accident in 2000 that left him with a shattered pelvis. He ventured into reality TV, opened bars and restaurants, and launched a tequila brand that spawned lawsuits of its own. His relationship with reality shows reveals a man desperate to pivot beyond his Mötley Crüe persona. Yet Netflix reduces him to the dirt-soaked caricature, omitting every attempt at reinvention. After a decade apart, Crüe reunited in 2005 for a blockbuster arena tour, then again in 2008 with the Crüe Fest Festival, sharing stages with Godsmack and Drowning Pool. These comebacks weren't simply nostalgia trips. Each tour tested their physical limits and personal patience. Tomorrow's headlines teased potential splits, just as often as sold-out shows. The dirt skips over these cyclical reunions, giving fans only one nostalgic montage, instead of 3 decades worth of changing lineups, setlists, and stadium records. Culturally, Motley Crue's influence extends far beyond pyrotechnics. They reshaped fashion, launched countless tribute bands, and inspired documentaries on the excesses of the 1980s. They pioneered direct-to-fan marketing long before social media, mailing exclusive merchandise and limited-edition vinyl to fan clubs. None of these industry-shaping tactics appear in Netflix's slick narrative, which opts for fast cuts and shocking headlines instead of exploring the band's true legacy in music business innovation. Perhaps the most glaring omission is their philanthropic side. In the wake of Skylar's death, Vince Neil founded charities for pediatric cancer research. Nikki Sixx donated to mental health organizations and veterans' causes. Tommy Lee publicly supported domestic violence prevention groups, despite his own convictions. Married members volunteered at hospitals. Mick Mars advocated for spinal disease research. Netflix's treatment: a handful of passing shots of band members at red carpet events, with zero context about their real-world impact, contrast the film's hollow bravado with the band's actual trajectory. 4 men facing addiction, disease, grief, legal warfare, and the wreckage of fame, yet continually rebounding. The dirt's rapid-fire style might thrill the senses, but it fails the heart. It's a shorthand spectacle, rather than a substantive exploration of what it means to survive and even thrive under the weight of a shared past. In our next section, we'll dissect how Netflix's own editing choices mirror Motley Crue's knack for self-mythologizing. We'll unpack the power of narrative control, from deleted scenes to music, licensing decisions, and show you how Hollywood shapes rock history to fit tidy story arcs. The real dirt isn't just on stage, it's in the cutting room. Netflix's narrative scissors didn't just trim the fat. They lopped off entire limbs of nuance, reshaping Motley Crue's saga into a tidy trilogy of excess, downfall, and redemption. To understand how Hollywood molds rock history, we need to examine 3 key tools: selective omissions, music license constraints, and montage magic. First, let's talk about selective omissions. In a typical 2-hour biopic, every deleted minute represents a conscious choice. Producers might cut a scene because